Okay, so my name is Dani Littman. I'm a sophomore, second year student studying physics and astronomy at the University of Iowa. What we're doing is we're doing a follow-up study on something that my mentor did a few years ago. There was a paper published in 2015 by Professor Mutel and a graduate student, Christine Lynch, and they looked at this star 2M0746, and you can see these localized magnetic loops that come out of the star. You can see these pulses, these radio emissions that come out in these interval pulse periods. So about once every 2 hours you get like this pulsed emission from the star. And part of what they did in the previous paper is they modeled those emissions, and they were able to come up with this 3D diagram of what these magnetic loops look like that are on the star. They saw that the way that the magnetic field works is that you actually have these localized loops. So if I were to draw a picture of it, here's the star. And on the star, you're going to have these like localized regions where you're going to have magnetic loops come out. And depending on the orientation of the star to us, we might see some varying frequencies coming out of these loops. We might be able to see different orientations of the loops. So it helps us get a really good understanding of what this star looks like, and understanding what this star looks like also helps us kind of say, well, this is a different mechanism than what works in the sun, so how can we compare that to what we are seeing with the sun in our own solar system? Another thing that we're starting to kind of look into with these stars, with these radio pulses, is how does this affect like exoplanets that orbit around these stars? There was a paper that came out recently about this TRAPPIST-1 system that has all these different exoplanets orbiting around an ultra-cool dwarf star. So kind of an interesting thing to ask with some of these stars that we're trying to look at currently is, can we look at what we have with our star and kind of think, oh, if it had a planet going around it, what would happen to the habitability of that planet? So we're kind of looking at all different aspects of it as we're doing this follow-up to the research that was published in 2015, and we're seeing some pretty cool results. So my plans after I graduate with a degree in physics and astronomy is to go directly into grad school. That's really where I want to keep going with my education. I want to keep learning new things. I want to be able to, see different aspects of astronomy that maybe I haven't even come in contact with. I might take a plasma physics course later in my undergraduate career. I might take some optics courses and stuff like that. That'll open up a lot of different specialized fields that I could potentially go in. The main goal that I have when I'm out of undergraduate and going through grad school is I really want to stick around in academia. I think there's a big importance on continuing research, and that's something that interests me, and that's something that I think is valuable to put myself in a position where I can kind of give back to an academic community and also communicate to the general public a little bit more, because I really like the idea of sharing with other people what's some of the cool stuff that's going on in the scientific world right now, especially in physics and astronomy. It's very fun to kind of go into that with people. So definitely becoming a professor, in other words, would be great, and being able to reach out to the community, different communities, the general public that might not be as scientifically connected, trying to show them some of the ropes of science. Part of the big thing with getting funding from politicians and government is that, sometimes you really need those extra things to make your work go smoothly. Kind of like what I kind of said when we were upstairs. I had a computer that crashed on me multiple times while I was trying to use it, and it didn't have enough memory space to actually do any of the stuff I needed it to do. When you run into a problem like that, it's basically like you can't really do anything. You're kind of without the main tool that you're working with. And especially when you're doing research with stuff like I am, where you're working extensively with computers and you're working on computer programs, you're programming yourself, you're working with huge data sets, you really need that speed, that kind of capacity to do the calculations for you. And we're in a day and age where it should be quite easy to do extremely big and fast calculations with a computer, and that's something that we have to keep rolling with. So having the funding to get stuff like that is very important. Another aspect of receiving funding, or more like support from politicians, more like, is kind of along the lines of, it really shows that politicians and the government and the general public, because the politicians, in my eyes, are acting as kind of this representation of the general public in kind of like, a higher standpoint, is that they actually care and support science. They care about and they support science research going on. So the more funding that they're able to give, it basically means that, they are giving the support, and they are saying, go do it, go find out kind of those mysteries that we have. You can say, give money out to cancer research. You're finding like all of this extremely beneficial stuff that's going to push everyone forward. And when you get to aspects of something like astronomy, where I'm working with, a small star, and maybe I have something to do with exoplanets as well, it's not directly beneficial to anyone. But the thing that is directly beneficial is the fact that it's forwarding the human race in a way that, if you didn't know about these things, what is the point of, doing certain studies? What's the point of like music? What's the point of art? It's kind of like, in that respect, do you actually care about, supporting and funding these things that are really going to push a better understanding and a higher level of humanity towards for people? So I think that's also another extremely valuable way to look at receiving funding, along with kind of, there's those two aspects of, we need the tools in order to do the research, and also it's a huge amount of support and a huge kind of statement that people really do care about the knowledge that you're able to gain from research.